Well, folks, sometimes you got it and sometimes you don't. All my picks this card were total busts, except for one, the obvious one.
You are listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank. I'm your host, Jay, along with my co-host, Mike. Mike, tonight, none of my picks for this card just turned out right for me. And except for one, and it was the obvious one, of course.
I wasn't perfect, but I think I got over 500%.
Ronda Rousey, let's jump right into it. Ronda Rousey versus Betch Correia, as they say. I don't think anybody's ever going to beat Ronda Rousey. The way she ran in there and basically brawled with the brawler and just beat her down. What was your take on the fight?
She did say that she wanted to hurt her, so
yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah, she said that she wanted to punish her and not finish the fight quickly. There goes that, right?
Right.
34 seconds, folks. Ronda Rousey is trying to put up a new record here, I think. And she's trying to get consecutive fights where she wins under a minute, I think. And she's got a few under her belt now, right? 2 or 3 consecutive?
No, I think, her last 3 fights or last 4 fights, I think were a little over a minute. So maybe our last 3 fights were a little over a minute together.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's just crazy. And, the one thing I took away from this fight, Mike, was the fact that, and I watched it 5 times, okay, because it was only 34 seconds, so why not? People were saying that, other fighters anyway, that don't like Ronda were saying that she doesn't like to get hit, that she doesn't like to get punched in the face. I did not see that tonight. I watched her go in, throwing punches and not wincing, not pulling away from their punches, just taking it and going in there and just fighting like a mad woman.
She started that way, and then when it got to the cage, she released an even bigger barrage and a couple of punches and had Betch face planted, and I jumped off my seat when I saw that.
That face plant was brutal. I haven't seen a woman fighter face plant like that yet. I don't know if you've seen that, but I have not seen that yet. Not like that.
No, Jay, I haven't seen anything like that. The ladies, they don't have as much power as the men.
Yeah,
I mean that's just in generalities.
And we were just discussing Tate's newfound power.
Yeah, and Rousey won up to that for sure. I mean, Tate came in her fight last week, I believe. Yeah, last week showed I got power. This is going to be a new wrinkle, or I called it a new wrinkle in the next fight, but. No. It's
pretty sad that Tate was one up because we were excited for this power because we thought, oh no, here it is. At least she's got a shot, a puncher's chance. And while she still kind of has that, I don't know after seeing tonight. Like I think that Rousey tonight solidified her domination in the bantamweight division. I don't see anybody beating her at this point. I think I just don't see it, Mike.
Well, Jay, what do you do against her? Because basically, Ronda Rousey put Betch Correia against the fence and was close. And so Betch now has to decide in a split second, mind you, do I worry about the takedown, the judo throw, and get armbarred, or do I try and block these punches? And this time it was punches. The next time it could be a judo throw into an armbar. She's unbeatable in my opinion, and I say that simply because of who's in the division. I don't see anybody landing with enough power to stop her, and that's the only thing that'll happen.
Ronda Rousey wins again, and there's not much more to say about that.
You know what, Jay? You're right. I'm just going to let it go. You're right.
Yeah, there's not much you could say, folks. Ronda Rousey will be the bantamweight champ for a long time. Next up, we had Claudia Gadelha versus Jessica Aguilar. Now, Jessica Aguilar, as you know, she's been around different promotions for years, almost 10 years now. And she's been one of those fighters that has been fun to watch. When I saw she was fighting, I got excited to see her in the UFC, but I didn't recognize Claudia's name until I saw her. And then I was like, oh, her. This lady is the one that, of course, fought Jędrzejczyk. And Jędrzejczyk, of course, is the strawweight champ. It was such a close fight. It was a split decision win for Jędrzejczyk, and it's Claudia's only loss. Now Claudia is 13-1, Mike. What did you think about this fight?
I thought it was a great fight. I mean, the first 2 rounds were soundly for Claudia. It really showed how amazing her power is. Just she throws everything into the punches. Her grappling is good. But I don't want to sleep on Jessica Aguilar. She was the WSOF, the World Series of Fighting strawweight champ. She fought in Bellator as well.
Yeah.
So she came in with a really tough first fight, and she was winning that 3rd round. Claudia, wins that fight hands down, obviously.
Yeah.
And I want to see the rematch. We're going to get the rematch with Jędrzejczyk, which will be great.
And here's the thing. Between Claudia and Johanna, I see Claudia being the more well-rounded fighter, honestly. I think she has the ground game. She has the striking. Where Jędrzejczyk really excels, I think, is that her striking is just a notch higher than Claudia's. I think she's a bit better with her striking. She's got a little more power, I would say, than Claudia. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because she's knocking people out.
Yeah.
And you don't get a lot of that. We just talked about Ronda Rousey knocking people out.
Yeah.
And really, how many other people have been knocked out by hands, mind you, not knees, in the women's divisions? And
Sure.
Jędrzejczyk is one of them, and Rousey's the other.
Yeah. And Claudia, I think that she's got some power in her hands too. I'm just giving the slight nod to Johanna, but that's
why it was a split. I agree.
Yep. Next up, we had Antonio Bigfoot Silva versus Soa Palele. What did you think about this fight, Mike? I'll ask you first.
Well, I knew it was really just a fight, really just to have 2 big guys in there, just so that we could see somebody get knocked out or finished. Because we had a 7-fight main card, Jay, which was I've never seen before. I didn't know who to pick here because Palele hasn't done very much. I mean, he's won some fights now in the UFC, but not against any big names. And Bigfoot, he's won some good fights, but he's lost some good fights too. So this was just kind of a pick-em fight for me. What did you think?
I thought that, I think that as round 2 started, I think Bigfoot smelled blood. He knew Palele tired himself out. And it was evident at the end of the round the way Palele stumbled back to his corner. And I think he just jumped on him and gave him that flurries of punches and knees and just took him out with a TKO. And like you said, it was a fight that was thrown together, 2 big guys in there. They wanted to see a knockout, and that's what they got.
Yeah, Bigfoot's lost most of his fights in the UFC. I guess you give him another unranked guy. I mean, he's got wins over Reem and Brown, but he's lost to Velasquez. He's got the no contest where he got caught for testosterone.
Yeah,
with the Mark Hunt fight, which was great. He finished Arlovsky. He's finished Mir, but I mean, it's hot and cold with him, and I think you just give him an unranked guy. And see where it goes from there.
feel the same way about Bigfoot. I'm always like, I look at him and I don't see a very technical fighter or a really great fighter in the octagon, but he surprises us sometimes. He surprises us with the W sometimes, with the knockout or with the submission, and it's crazy. But you're exactly right. He's hot and cold a lot. But Bigfoot, of course, wins that fight. Next up, we had Stefan Struve versus Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Now, this is a fight I totally got wrong. Stefan Struve, I thought, was going to come in and get his chin clocked. Fortunately for Struve, he got a chin. He got a chin, Mike. Much like Muir, he went out and bought a chin.
Yeah, but Jay, I don't know about you, man. I didn't see anything really new from Stefan Struve.
I didn't either.
If Minotauro Nogueira really could have just
except for the chin
if he wanted to. Yeah, well, I mean, he got some chin, but he's got a chin. But this is Minotauro Nogueira, who's never been a real big knockout guy. But I just didn't. I wanted to see the new Stefan Struve.
Yeah, you know what?
It's the same.
Yeah, I didn't see him fight tall like he said he would. I didn't see that. I saw him brawling in there. The same Stefan Struve. I did not see him fight tall. He wasn't keeping him at bay until the very last round is where I saw glimpses of Stefan Struve fighting tall, Mike. And it was the very last round. And that was with a very tired Nogueira. A very tired Nogueira who wasn't coming in on him as fast as he was in the first 2 rounds. What happens to Stefan Struve if he's got some other fighter, a faster fighter he's fighting against, a Cain Velasquez?
Right.
I think he gets KO'd, you know?
That's what I was going to bring up as well, is that both of these guys show basically the mid-card or, I'm sorry, not mid-card, but mid-tier UFC heavyweights.
Yeah.
Because a guy, Velasquez, like you said, Junior Dos Santos, I'll go back a little bit and just say that Shane Carwin, if he was fighting, I think he puts Struve down. I think he puts Big Nog down. These guys are going to stay on the – okay, I will say that Big Nog stays on all these cards because he's a legend and he's a Hall of Famer. Stefan Struve, I don't know where you're going to put him. I think he's going to be on just Fox Sports 1 cards, UFC Fight Nights.
Yeah. Like you were saying, I was disappointed that I didn't get to see him fight the way he said he was going to fight. I don't see a tall fighter fighting tall in Stefan Struve. I see him doing the same old brawl style fighting that he's always done. And that's unfortunate for him. But he wins tonight. He got a 30-27 victory, decision victory. So,
I was going to ask you about that, Jay. I thought the first 2 rounds were close, and I thought Nog might have got the decision being in Brazil. He didn't get the decision.
Yeah, I didn't think
Struve won overall. So
yeah, I actually gave it a 30-27 for Struve. I actually scored it that same way. I wrote notes down in between each round, and I had him winning each round 10-9. So, but like you said, the first 2 rounds were very close, so I could understand that. Okay, next up we had Lopez versus Vieira, and this was the Tough Brazil Bantamweight finalists. They opened the round quickly throwing leather, Mike. It was very reminiscent of the old WEC fights we used to watch where the guys used to leave it all in the ring, Mike. Yeah. And that's the first thing that hit me. I was so excited when they started throwing leather like that and they started going back and forth with guillotines. Guys, if you have not seen this fight, I think it's an excellent fight. At least the first round was amazing. Totally amazing. What did you think about this fight, Mike?
The scrambles were great.
Yeah.
That's something that I always remember mostly about WEC is the scrambles. We get a lot of good scrambles, a lot of good movement in with wrestling and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and stuff like that. We do in the UFC, but WEC had it all. And that's what these guys did. And I was, on the edge of my seat. What's going to happen? Yeah. Jumping to guillotine. And this wasn't like where someone just gets a guillotine when they're on their back already. They were jumping guillotines. Yeah. And those were awesome.
And they were back and forth. It was so crazy in the first round. Of course, it slowed a little in the second. I'm sure they were tired. All those guillotines that you put on people take a lot of strength out of you. And these guys were trying hard for the submission wins in the very first round. So I could understand that. But the third, it started getting back to that, leave it all in the ring type fight. And they didn't want to leave it in the hands of the judges. But unfortunately, that's the way it went. And the judges gave the nod to Vieira. Congrats to Vieira, but honestly, Lopez, I think they both have bright futures. What do you think about them?
Yeah, I agree. And just to back up for a second for round 2, something I noticed that I wanted to talk about too is that Lopez, his eyes, his eyes weren't bleeding, but he had cuts around his eyes that both were bleeding. And I bring that up simply because I want to talk about how we always talk about, leaving it in the cage and going on your shield, but their faces showed it and their bodies showed it. And it was really, really a spectacular fight to watch.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I think that was fight of the night. Next up, we had Franca versus Bruno. This was the Ultimate Fighter lightweight finalists. Unfortunately for Bruno, he looked like he was a lightweight up against a welterweight in there.
I would just say that it's just one of those things where a guy knows how to cut weight maybe better than another person. The fight was pretty good. It was actually very good, and I couldn't believe it went down to the wire the last 20 seconds.
For me, I felt that Franca was so much bigger and stronger that he just ragdolled Bruno. Got the win by rear naked choke eventually.
Yeah, it was kind of one-sided, like you said, but there was times where Bruno, you think he's going to lose the fight, and he comes not out of nowhere, but he's able to reverse him against the cage or get out of a submission attempt. And so I agree with you, it was one-sided, but there was just enough in there for me to keep watching.
Well, congrats to Franca for winning that tough lightweight contract. Little Nog versus Shogun. This would be a rematch about a decade in the making, Mike. Of course, that fight was in Pride, and you had just watched that fight recently. What did you think about this fight versus that last fight?
Well, I think the first fight was better, and if you go to the Facebook fan site, I've got it linked there. It was better, but this fight was a good fight too. I picked Shogun to win this fight. He got it done. Both these guys are getting up there in age, but I think it showed that Shogun, now that he's back at Shootabox, or at least with his old coach from there, that he's maybe not going to have the title, but at least he's a little more invigorated. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what I took away from this fight. I took away from this fight that they're both not going anywhere really in the division. I think that Shogun still has a chance to hang around and do his thing, maybe win some, lose some. But as a belt holder again, never. Shogun won this fight, Mike, but Shogun lost his last fight against Owen St. Preux, OSP.
Yeah.
Where does Shogun go from here?
I think Shogun just stays on main cards. I don't think he's going to be a main event on any of the cards, even on a Fox Sports 1, unless they're in Brazil. He's getting older. Guys are getting better. But at least tonight he looked a little better.
And even at 33, he's very seasoned in the game. He's been in it for many years. He's been fighting so long, so many fights. He's got more miles under his belt, so to speak, in the fight game.
To quote Indiana Jones, it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. And that's exactly what Shogun is going through. I mean, he started off in Shootabox where those guys, they sparred, but they weren't pulling punches. It was all out. And that's what's happening right now, is that he's finally starting to feel the brunt of that.
So Shogun wins 29-28. Decision win, of course. Now, Mike, there was other MMA tonight.
Yeah, World Series of Fighting 22 was on tonight, the same time as UFC 190. So hopefully you got your DVR set, or you checked out the link I posted on the Facebook site, because you could have watched it through your computer. I'll just say a couple things. Marlon Moraes, he keeps his belt. He looked great doing it.
He did.
I mean, his leg kicks, his punches. It went to the third round, and basically the way it ended was these guys threw some hooks at each other. Marlon landed two really good ones right in a row, and it sent Shimon Moraes, no relation, Shimon to the canvas. And Moraes does what he does best. He jumped on his back and he choked him out. It was a really great fight to see.
Admittedly, I don't have that channel that you get to watch it. I think it's NBC Sports.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't have that. I'm a cord cutter, people, so I don't have these channels. But I did watch it online, and I have to say that I am a fan of Moraes now. I think that he's an excellent fighter, and you're very right about this guy. He can be in the UFC right now.
Yeah, he's he trains with Frankie Edgar and with Eddie Alvarez. I mean, he looks good.
He looks like one of them.
Yeah, it's an amalgam of both of them.
Yeah, I totally see that. I'm definitely a fan. Another fight in that card that I wanted to get to, it was Jake Shields against Paul Harris. And many people know Paul Harris was in the UFC for a while. Paul Harris was known for being a nasty fighter. He used to hold on a little too long in submission holds. Guess what? No surprise. Did the same thing again tonight, Mike. What'd you think about that?
Musamar Paul Harris is a dirty fighter, and I don't think he should be fighting anymore.
Yeah.
He didn't hold on to a heel hook like he normally does. Jake Shields got out of that. But basically he held another submission. It was a Kimura. First of all, it was a beautiful reversal. Shields took him down, and Paul Harris used the momentum to flip him over and just crank the Kimura. And Steve Mazzagatti puts both his hands on Paul Harris's back, slaps him 3 or 4 times to say stop, and Paul Harris holds it on for another couple seconds.
I watched that fight, and I was disgusted by it, as anyone should be watching that fight. Paul Harris...
Jay, the eye pokes as well.
Yeah, the eye pokes as well. Paul Harris, he has Jake in that Kimura, and Jake is tapping, And as soon as he taps, I see Mazzagatti jump down and start hitting him. And it literally feels like forever before Paul Harris actually stops cranking. And sure enough, as soon as Jake gets up, he's pissed off. He's mad.
He threw a punch at him.
He threw a punch at him.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, I understand his frustration. And there was some words exchanged. And of course, Paul Harris is going to pretend like, oh, he didn't hear anything. And he's done that before. He's said that before. And it's time to just cut this guy.
You know, a lot of people knew about the heel hooks and the late holds. But to give the audience out there who didn't see the fight, a lot of the fight, Jake Shields would be on top. And what Paul Harris would do is he would do what's called a crossface, you know, with his elbow, his forearm against Jake Shields' forehead.
Yeah.
And then he'd pull his fingers down and get them in Jake Shields' eyes. And you could hear Jake Shields complaining about it. And whether we like Jake Shields or not, a lot of people think he's a boring fighter. Some people think he's just all right. He should be in the UFC. Whatever you think, Jake Shields is not a dirty fighter, and he's an honest fighter. And based off those two guys, I'm going to go with Jake Shields. And if you looked at his eyes at the end of the fight, it was even worse.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Paul Harris is a dirty fighter. He needs to go. He does not deserve to hold any title anywhere, in my opinion.
I think it just hurts your business.
Yes.
If you just look at it that way, it hurts your promotion to have this dirty guy there. I don't think people want to see legitimate knockouts.
Yeah.
Like Tyson when we were growing up, you know, like Tyson, or let's even keep it here and say Ronda Rousey. That legitimate faceplant was a thing of beauty. But these things, you've got to go. And I want to just touch really quickly on Steve Mazzagatti, how he doesn't take any points away, or how he doesn't even stop the fight.
I agree.
Is beyond me with these eye gouges.
Yeah, you know what? Steve Mazzagatti has run into a lot of issues in several organizations. And, you know, Dana White has beef with Mazzagatti.
Yes, he does.
And rightfully so. Tonight was just another example of Steve Mazzagatti's incompetence.
Mm-hmm. I will say one last thing, though, just on the WSOF in general, though. It's a great fighting organization. Don't let this one bad apple of Rousimar Paul Harris stop you from watching these guys.
Yeah.
A lot of really good up-and-comers. Jay, you know you're a big fan of I know you're a big fan of Nick Newell. I am, too. I think he's a great fighter. Justin Gaethje, their lightweight champ is good. Lance Palmer from Alpha Male, their featherweight champ is good. They have some really good fights.
Yeah, they do.
So WSOF, great promotion, and I thought it was great to see Stitch Duran there. You know, the UFC just let him go. They're one of our favorite cut men. He's at the WSOF now. I mean, I'm happy to see him again.
That's awesome. I'm happy to see him there, too.
News Corner.
Here in the news, we've got this situation with the intravenous rehydration and the ban that UFC is putting on it in October. What are your thoughts on this IV rehydration ban?
Yeah, I know, Jay, you and I talked about it a bit on blab.im, and I wrote about it on the Facebook fan page for the podcast. And for those who don't know, it's kind of tough, I think, for both of us, Jay, unless you've changed your mind.
No, it's tough. I go back and forth on this. We've touched on this before. And you know what? Some fighters are for it. Some fighters are against it. Most are against it because it's said that over 98% of the fighters actually use IV rehydration after a weight cut. And I understand the benefits that it can have for some fighters because some fighters just don't know how to rehydrate properly without it. I understand that, but I've also heard on the other side of it that there is a proper way to rehydrate without the IV use that these fighters can learn. But it's a dangerous thing to just take out altogether all of a sudden without fighters getting acclimated to, you know, not having to rely on the IV rehydration. So
if we change this, there's going to be a strong learning curve. But one of the reasons that the commissions want to change it is because IVs can mask PEDs, they say. And that's a big thing going on right now, obviously, with steroids. And we talked about the Mark Hunt Bigfoot fiber. Bigfoot got, you know, popped for testosterone.
Yeah.
So you've got that, but then you've got, you know, the safety of the fighter.
Yeah. If you're dehydrated, folks, you know, you're more prone to getting knocked out than somebody who's well hydrated. And these folks that cut a lot of weight and get dehydrated right before the weigh-ins, they have to rely on IVs to rehydrate. But like Mike said, They can mask PEDs that way. But the question me and Mike had, and I still have not found any solid proof of them being able to test to see if you've used an IV rehydration system or if you've done it. Because the thing is, there's no way to test for that. And you're not with these fighters 24/7. How are you going to know if a Jose Aldo, who's already said, folks, that he's going to continue to use IV rehydration, and even after the ban, he doesn't care. It's going to take ninjas, he said, to find out if he does it. And that's just it.
Yeah, his quote also was, "I'll just tell them I'm going to get something to eat, and then I'll get it done." Yeah,
exactly. and I don't think they're going to be able to really curb them from doing this. But it is what it is, folks. I'm on both sides of the fence. I keep jumping back and forth. I don't definitively know what I want done with this situation, but,
Well, Jose Aldo, he also talked about how it is the safest scientifically, his words, not mine, but it's very safe to do
it is.
The IV, and I'm sure it is. But, George St. Pierre, he weighed in on this. He was asked about that as well. And, George, he did the IV earlier in his career. And then once he learned how to cut weight properly, he stopped.
Yeah.
And so he's for the ban. So it really comes down to, if we have this ban, we're going to have some guys moving weight classes probably. And I'm fine with that. But we're going to have a year where MMA is going to look a little tricky, a little weird to us. And, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. Conor McGregor's also come out and said that he's done both. And he can not use the IV if it comes down to it. It's not a big deal for him. But he's a big featherweight.
Right.
He probably walks around at 170, to be honest. So we will see what happens with the IV rehydration ban. This concludes this episode of MMA Think Tank. If you'd like to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing or be a guest on the show, call 925-237-1296. Or you can email us at mmathinktank@gmail.com. You could also find us on Facebook at MMA Think Tank or on Twitter at Gene Wilder's Hair. Thanks for listening.
We go.